Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Women in Project Management Conference. I think we're just going to be switching over to the slide. Thank you so much. It's such an honor and a privilege to be hosting this event with these incredible women who have just been leading the way in project management for so long. My name is Amber Howard. I'll be your host for the afternoon, and I'm also one of the panelists. I'm really just we know how valuable your time is. So we're just so grateful and thankful to have you here with us today. I also wanted to take a minute to, really acknowledge all of the panelists and moderators and our keynote speaker, Donna Fitzgerald. So excited to have you all with us this afternoon. And wanted to take a moment to acknowledge and thank our sponsors for this event. So starting with our premier sponsors, the Project Management Association of Canada and ProSAP Associates Limited, along with we just saw the video from our supporting sponsor, MVP Software Solutions. Our promotional sponsors, Dalhousie University, the City of Mississauga, PMA Western, the University of Prince Edward Island, West Shore Chamber of Commerce, Persica, Tidal Shift, Tempest Resource, as well as Arcade TCS. I also wanted to let you know, for those of you that can stick around to the end, and we hope you do, that we're going to be giving away some amazing prizes this afternoon, valued up to almost $4,000. So you'll be eligible for those prizes just by being here at the end and the closing of the event today. And to claim your prize, we'll let you know this information. It'll be available in the chat as well. But you'll need to reach out to our associate, Alana Hughes, and she'll be able to make sure that you receive delivery of your prize. So there's 10 prizes that we're giving out, totaling almost $4,000 in value. So how is today going to go? Well, we're going to be starting in a moment. I have the privilege of introducing our keynote speaker. And then after that, we'll take a few-minute break while we set up for our first panel, which is going to be moderated by Linda Vella. Once that panel is done, we'll have another short break while we switch over to our second panel, that's going to be moderated by Sandra Boyle. And at the end of each of those panels, you'll have an opportunity to ask questions and have your questions answered by the amazing panelists that are here today. So you'll be able to, depending on how you've logged into this session, you'll either be able to write those questions in the chat or in the questions section, and we'll make sure that your questions get to the panelists. At the end of the second panel, we'll do our closing, and we'll let you know how you can claim your PDUs, and then we'll do the prize selection. Then we'll award the prizes for being here. And I just wanted to let you know that this event, if you do have to go because you're unable for other commitments to stay for the whole event, this event is being recorded and will be available on PMAC's YouTube channel at a later date. So with all of that, again, thank you for being here. It's a real honor and a privilege to be having this event, because I know for all of the women that are here this afternoon speaking, we really get the importance of having more and more women enter the project management field. So we're so grateful for your attendance. And with no further ado, I'm going to introduce our keynote speaker. So we have the privilege today of having join us Donna Fitzgerald, who started her career as a Silicon Valley trained CFO at firms such as Intel, RLM, and Sun Microsystems. She then moved into complex project and program delivery with executive positions at Oracle, Pacific Edge, North Consulting, and the Qatar Consortium, among others. Today, Donna is a seasoned program and portfolio management expert and a strategy execution expert. She managed her first IT program more than a decade before the 1996 version of the PMBOK was published. In the mid-90s, she became active in the nascent Agile development community and later wrote for Tech Republic. In 2007, she joined Gartner Research for 10 years, where she helped clients solve such problems as how to effectively execute strategy, how to convert the IT project management office into an Agile powerhouse, how to set up and run a strategic enterprise project management office, and how to move the portfolio from a list of projects into an effective executive decision-making tool. Later, Donna was the chief product evangelicus for Prosymmetry and a member of the Analysis Syndicate. Today, while she's occasionally accused of being an iconoclast, Her commitment to helping PMs deliver successful projects and programs has never wavered. Donna, such a privilege to have you here with us. Thank you so much for being here.
Get going then. So a couple of things that would change in the introduction, but it's basically right. I've been in this profession since equivalent 1979, the beginning of time. There was no Microsoft project. There was no PCs. I did my first Gantt chart with colored pencils. That turned out to be a real joke, and 13-column graphic paper. Now, the importance of that is that effectively, since I had to roll my own with nothing there except a few people to give me suggestions and software development methodologies, I found what worked. So I'm going to take, cough, 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 43 years of being in this profession and try to give you things, mental models that I think will help you. So the one thing I want you to notice is that I've highlighted PM. The PM that I'm going to talk about is in its broadest sense. That means projects, programs, portfolio, products, which we're really seeing with Agile, and more importantly, people management. So it's clear I was chief product evangelist for a resource management company and chief people officer. I think people are critical now. So I want to kind of set that up, whether it'll weave through the rest of the rest of the presentation. I just want to make sure that we're all focused that a real project manager, and some of you get mad at me for saying that, actually works with people and not paper. And I think that's going to be a lot more important. And I think that's why a lot of women are becoming Scrum Masters now, because they get back to people. So with that said, this is what always happens, Kevin. I can't, it's hard to start. So I want to talk about how do you approach your projects. What we're seeing today is really two approaches, and there's a shift. There's the way it was when I started at the beginning of time, the way it's become, and the way Agile is driving us, which I think is a circular pattern. So let's start out with one mode is goal-directed, outcome-directed, and non-linear, which I will clearly explain as we go along. To make I'm going to assume most people know Myers-Briggs. So the percentage of the population that is inherently, I mean, as in born wired this way, is about 26 to 34% according to some statistics. And let's put it this way, it's somewhere in that range, whatever it is. The majority of people are considered S, which is sensing, organized, linear, again, the majority of the population. We've very much had positions for a lot of people who are linear, and we've rewarded that. Things I believe in the future are going to be coming back because Scrum has essentially broken the paradigm. So what I want to do is set up, so if we look at this as an audience, 26 to 34 of you would come out as N's, and the majority of you would probably be S's. I'm going to talk about the nonlinear and models to support that kind of thinking, but what it's important that all of you understand is that Myers-Briggs says we can flex our preferences. So if you are an S, nothing says in this world that you can't cultivate the thinking that we're talking about. It's simply your choice. So when I started my career in finance, and let me tell you, that was buttoned down, detailed work, because I did accounting as part of my finance. So I came across as an ENTJ. That means I could be very focused, very judging, make decisions quickly. Once I got out of that profession, I actually reverted to my natural ENTP. All it was shifting. So we can make decisions. If you still ask me to run a spreadsheet, I can sit there for hours. As long as it's got numbers and I understand the numbers, I can hyper focus. According to a friend of mine, which I hope you guys will find amusing, his daughter is an expert on autism work. And he was talking to her one day, asking her a question, and she said, "Dad, I think we're going to find most people are on the autistic spectrum." And those of us who hyper focus probably are. But it doesn't mean what it seems to mean. It just means that we're people. And I want all of you to hear that this presentation is intended to empower you to make choices, because your role is not as important at all as who you are. That's the key thing. You as a person, how you engage with people, what you do, that is the critical thing. So I want to give you some tools which you can work with. Take them as far as you want, change them, do whatever. It worked for me. So I just want to freely offer this. Now, where do I think we're heading? And Jan Thomas wrote a book called Think Differently. I know Jan Thomas. She, in my mind, is one of the top neurocognitive researchers in the US. And I like her work primarily because I understand it. So if we're talking embracing nonlinearity, because the general response from everybody says we are going into a much more complex, and we'll talk about what the word complex means, environment. Things will not be clear cut. The world of hundreds of projects in IT that are some, God forbid, some are 60 hours, some are 200 hours, things that in my day we didn't even think needed to be managed, have project managers. We've been doing multi-project management to handle this volume. That will probably change for a whole host of reasons as we go through the next couple of years. So the more complex it is, the more it pays to adopt some of this thinking. So must have big picture first, must use associational logic rather than conventional logic. I'm going to kind of skip that one because I'm afraid that one's a little bit more brain wiring, and start with the 4 ways that logic, nonlinear logic can be different. Or organize organically, not sequentially. The key in nonlinear thinking is pattern recognition. Pattern recognition entails seeing something, making a mental note of it, thinking about it, and saying, I think I understand. The next time you see something at work, you can say, is that the same pattern I saw, or is that a new pattern? Those of you who are deep into Agile covers patterns because it's one of the key things there. But for those people who are not in Agile and haven't squirreled down into all the literature, we're going to consistently talk about observation and either remembering or writing down what you see so you can reflect on that. Now, let's talk about this in a little bit more depth. Think rapidly, not incrementally. Well, that seems kind of a silly statement until you realize that somebody who's a nonlinear thinker has reduced a lot of previous learning to a model. So it's instant recognition, but they've done all the work. So what I did here was draw essentially the model of how you do this. You observe, you learn, which means you reflect on it, you remember it, you relearn every time you observe and remember, and then at some point you start innovating. A very simple model. Now, in case you think this is difficult, just last night, my girlfriend, who does the same kind of things I do, told me a story I loved, because I have other stories like it. She was talking to her girlfriend's 6-year-old, and that 6-year-old had made an independent decision to write down the names of all the guinea pigs she had had the opportunity to cuddle with. That type of thinking, I want to remember, I want to understand, I want to know what the differences are key things we're looking at. You'll also see with young children, because natural nonlinear thinkers show up really early. I was talking to my girlfriend one day, and her son was 8, and he was ordering people around and getting things organized. And she said to me, Donna, he's either going to be a project manager or he's going to be a dictator of a third world country. For other people who didn't grow up this way, and remember, there's only a small percentage of us, you just learn to do it. I mean, it's not that difficult. You observe. What did I observe? Either write it down or remember it. Every time you see it again, go through the same process, and then start making it your own. Because in everything I say, I want you to understand you get to change it so you can work with it. You are never a slave to this system. You are always in control. And I wanted to make a note of something that I'm somewhat legendary for when I manage programs. It's the 24-hour rule. So I was at Harvard as a program manager when I was working for Oracle. And oh my God, was it a disaster. I got brought in to do rescue. And I ran the numbers, I looked at the schedule, I looked at what it was going to take to salvage this monstrosity. And I went to the CFO and said, Betsy, you've got 48 million budgeted, as I remember. And if you do it according to my schedule, we could probably do it for 43. It'll take it from 3 or 4 years down to about 2 years. And her answer to me was, no, I will not. But I told her the rule was people had to make decisions in 24 hours for us to keep the pace. And she said, no, 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 no one here will make decisions that fast. The key is you need those decisions. And there are going to be a lot of things where you cannot control your schedule if the stakeholders and everybody else cannot make rapid decisions. To make rapid decisions, you need to come across as somebody who knows what she's saying, understands the details, and in whom they can have confidence. Now, this leads directly into favor connections, not systems. As a project manager, your primary work is with the stakeholders and the sponsors. And when I say work with the stakeholders, I mean really get to know what is truly important to them, because that's really where everything stands. Are you delivering what they care about that supports the outcome? Because we all know if you ask individual A and individual B, they're going to give you a list of all this airy-fairy stuff that has nothing, absolutely nothing to do with the outcome that drives the business forward. So you get to spend your work with the stakeholders ensuring that they know that the outcome is the most important and how in some manner their particular needs or desires can be met while the outcome is still the most important. And then situationally focused, not rule bound. The first thing I always say when I'm at Gartner to everybody I talk to is the first step in project management is accept reality. Because I see 99% of projects starting without actually saying, where are we really? You know, do we have the resources? Do we have the time? Do we have the money? Do we have the expertise? That seems like it should never happen, but I've actually always seen it happen. Years and years ago, one of the early names in project management, and I apologize, it's just slipping my mind, did some research, as college prof, did some research and found that 90% of all projects fail before they even start because they fail to accept reality. And I'm going to tell you that failure isn't your friend. You know, you really don't get credit for sticking it out to the end if it's going down. Your job is to kill the thing early or fix it, whichever alternative, because trust me, there are things that can't be fixed. Now, one of the things, because I'm talking a lot about the stakeholders, is in a meeting one day, one of the guys who worked for me, Colby, and I sat there and we drew this box and we called it the value cube. And then we said, well, it's a cube because you're going to fold it and there's 6 ways of looking at value. So when we first developed it, we called it value to sponsor, team, stakeholders, other shareholders, cost, time. And you see one I've developed more recently, focusing on the portfolio and taking into account resource management. So I want you to know, feel free to change those boxes any way you want. But it says, you gotta kind of juggle. Now, all of these things are not created equal, especially in a lot of software projects. Value to other stakeholders and customers may be simply explaining to people, as I used to do, phase 2 is your friend. I can't do what you want me to do as part of the goal that I've been given. So this is just a really simple model. So you don't lose, you define what the 6 boxes are to ensure that value is there. And then you tick down this list. This is what I'm talking about. This is a model, you develop it, you watch it. You don't need to remember. It gives you a place to start and you can internally judge, are you spending the right amount of time working on this? Now, because we really are entering a world where even though because of how early I entered the Agile movement and the Agile that I and a number of people who signed the Agile Manifesto thought we were advocating is not what's being done today. There are still some things from early Agile that are still around and still make sense. So for those of you who have never seen this, this is the Conifen model from Dave Snowden, and it is Conifen, and it is a Welsh word. So we start at the bottom with simple. Every time you see a project, a problem with your project, or somebody brings you a new project, new problem, I apologize, keep misspeaking, out of the blue, you look at this model and judge. Is this simple? We've had a tendency to try to force everything into high process, command and control, and make it simple and make it incremental and all sorts of things. some things fit there beautifully, but a lot of things don't. So you really have to say, is it simple? Can I just fix it and make it go away with a couple of pieces of paper? You'll have to understand, when I was early in my career, I looked at the fact that it took something like 7 pieces of paper for a manager in IT to buy $10,000 worth of capital assets. And that didn't seem right. I was the IT controller at the time. I just went in, I made a new policy, I made a new procedure, I sent it out to the people who approve those things, and we got it in place, 1 piece of paper. And 5 years later, one of the gentlemen who was a frequent user of that form caught me in the grocery store and said, Donna, I never got to thank you when you were at the company, but we all still use the form today, and we are all still really happy, so thank you. So sometimes solving simple problems is just amazing. Now, some problems are complicated, but actually you may not see them as often as you think. And I was talking to somebody, she said, oh, she always mixed up complicated and complex. Complicated is something like a data center move. Lots and lots and lots of moving parts, but you know what they are. Things could still go wrong, something can get lost, blah, 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 but you're in the known, and that's incredibly important. You can figure this out if you have domain expertise. I personally tend to avoid the complicated. It's not my strong suit. It really isn't, because it's a slog, according to me, but I have friends who are brilliant at it and love it. The next one over is the complex, and that's where and I've spent all my life in technology and new product engineering. This is business change. This is people who want something that doesn't exist, and it's going to take a whole bunch of strange things to get it there. That's mostly what I'm going to describe today. It's called complex adaptive systems. Every time people hear that, their brains freeze up. And I'm here to tell you, nope, nope, nope. It's not what you think. It's a lot simpler, because there's a whole science behind it, but we don't have to embrace the science. I was presenting a speech at a complex adaptive systems conference in Toronto. And so my hour presentation on a program I had run, where we'd used a lot of CAS assumptions, ended up turning into a 4-hour workshop. And one of the people in the room caught me, once the meeting was over, and he said, I'm a scientist. I really work with the true complex adaptive systems theory. And he said, you business people who've taken our models and bastardized them to fit your systems, you need to get out of our space. And me being me, I said, nope, we figured out how to use those models to solve our problems. Thank you very much for creating them, but we are truly appropriately using your models to solve new problems. So that's an important distinction. This works for us. There's no question. We're not trying to do evolutionary science. We're trying to do things in the truly uncertain, and that's defining the future. The last area, which you may occasionally see, is what Snowden calls chaotic. I call it wicked problem. And the rules of wicked problems are, it's like poverty. You can never totally eliminate poverty unless you make everybody exactly the same. And that's societally impossible. So the rule of a wicked problem is do the smallest thing to stop the pain, and then see what happens. You need to remember that the smallest fix to stop the pain, the hemorrhaging, whatever, and then be slowly guided as to where the next piece of it is to fix. Because if you try to fix the whole thing, it'll never work and you'll never get out of it. Now, another model that I absolutely love, and it just helps, it makes everything so fast because it just tells you, no matter how overworked, no matter how tired you are, you can go look at this and say, where am I? What do I do? So mostly you'll never look at it if you are in a mode where the problem you are trying to solve is close to certainty and close to agreement, because it's just, you know, get together, meet people, make agreements, and it's pretty much done. There are other situations where you're gonna have to sort of say, well, why don't we make a decision on this and see how that goes? And then we'll make another decision, because people are not certain that they can agree to a single solution. There's a whole discipline called logical incrementalism, but I found it's pretty clear. Once you understand sort of what a wicked problem is, you could do incremental decision making very, very easily, because that's what it is. Just solve where the bleeding is, solve what the crisis is, and keep your eyes open for the rest of it. I do that one first because we're still in the range of certainty. Now let's get far from agreement. And this is where you're going to spend all of your time. Politics, politics, and politics. There's no way that anybody can work in business today and not be subject to politics. It's just the way it is. And I'm going to tell you, sometimes you're going to make decisions that are uncomfortable for you. I was running a very large program, what was a large program to me at the time, 43 million. And remember, I'm a finance person, and money indirectly got misappropriated. So we had 81 sites we needed to convert to the new software we had developed. And one of those 81 sites, the general manager came out and relocated the 6 PCs we had installed to support our application. So we'd installed it on a Saturday, he'd reallocated it on a Sunday. So when the team showed up on Monday to work, the PCs were missing. So we could scream, we could yell, we could tell him he was, you know, not entitled to do that, and start a political fight that who knows where it was going to go. And as I said, the cost of 6 PCs against $43 million and coming in on time? No, I just bought 6 more PCs. So in some cases with political issues, you're going to have to slide. You don't want to go into immoral or unethical. And hear me say that as a finance person, where I know where those lines are and don't cross them. You're going to have to do some things sometimes that are uncomfortable. We'll call them a compromise to move things forward. We're not going to spend a lot of time on 4 because we've already covered it. Now the purple, this is stuff Stacy made up. And the message you're supposed to get between garbage can decision making and muddling through, search for error, all those terms, is you need to figure out how you and your team best solve complex problems. Now, I've looked at garbage can decision making, and I will be completely honest. I can't even remotely understand what they're talking about. So it's not a technique I would use. I do a lot of decide and test forward, because which again comes back to my 24-hour decision. If I could get an early agreement to go do A, even though I may need to get to Z, I get A done. And then I can take a look and say, do I need to do B, or by completing A, am I at B prime? So again, it's a model that no matter whether you're a natural N or you're an S learning this, the model will help you. The other thing that's important is, and great lesson I learned from a senior vice president of construction for the Big Dig in Boston. It was December of 1996, and he was a speaker at the local PMI meeting. And he came in talking about fuzzy thinking. And he said, I've always been straight up and down. It's all facts. That's what it is. And he said, then I got assigned this guy to help me. And I don't know what he was doing or how he was thinking, but oh my God, he's caught a whole bunch of things I wouldn't have caught. And he's right. And I think it's fuzzy thinking. I was fascinated with what he was saying, started to do the research, and I will tell you, I don't think it's fuzzy thinking. I think it's what I'm describing to you. But even if you end up as the senior vice president of construction, you don't need to do some of this. You just need to have someone on your team who naturally does it. None of what I'm saying, you can flex as far as you can, and then compensate by team members, because we don't do anything alone. Now, this is a little bit lower level than some of what I'm talking about. This is the real blocking and tackling that got me through my career. And some of you can laugh if you want, because it may seem kind of stupid, but I only took mission critical, deadline driven assignments. Why? Because I'm good at that. And there's a lot of things I'm not good at. So I know where to stick to my knitting. That means I'm there at 2 o'clock or I'm there at 11, and I need some help to remember all the other important things that aren't coming to me. So Peter Senge's book, The Fifth Discipline, to me was an eye-opener. The book's not terribly well written, but these 5 things, once you come to understand them, and I do have articles written on all of them, are magic, shared vision. Everybody on the team is seeing the same thing and goes in the same direction. Periodically, at least once a week, you check if that's true. Systems thinking. Now, that's a discipline we're not going to go deep into, but I'll give you the shortcut. Are you always looking at the feedback loops? Where are you? Where is it in? What feedback loop is it creating, and where is it in the feedback loops you understand? Once you master that, it's really good. Team learning, I usually change team learning to more team health. You know, are people working too hard? Are their hours, regardless of mine, too long? Are there problems in the group? And you need to check on that. I mean, one day, and I think I'm really good at this, but one day my project coordinator came in and said, Donna, Alice has a sleeping bag under her desk. And I said, why does she have a sleeping bag under her desk? And the answer was because she thinks she's going to have to work all weekend to get where she's supposed to be. So I learned that the team felt they were behind, even though somehow I had missed it. Mental models, I'm taking you through mental models. You know, do you have good ones? Do you have the appropriate ones? Are they helping you make the decisions you need to make? And the last is personal mastery. aside from all of this, you have a life. And your life, you're going to probably, if you're like the rest of us, you're going to go here, you're going to go there, you're going to try this, you're going to try that. Are you always in the process of becoming the person you are intended to be? Now, that's a whole nother presentation, and one that's very personal to me, because I believe in personal mastery. And again, written articles on it. But you don't want to forget yourself just because it's the little finger. You are still important. Now, total brain shift. When I was studying chaos theory, there is a rule in chaos theory that says outcomes are sensitively dependent on initial conditions. Now, what you should hear is, whoa, that means many projects start off on the wrong foot, just as I suggested from earlier research. So I developed the concept of a little model that I called area of order. So what you see here is a spider diagram where you assess those 6 things in relationship to the work you're doing. This example says the product is going into a receptive market. The culture of the company is very in line with this product, so they're going to support it. Very few dependencies, so it's a pretty new product. We've got some weaknesses though. And what I'll tell you is stakeholder and sponsor and risk tolerance are about the same. And that means there's no wiggle room in this. And then you see that complexities is low. And you go, whoa, I'm in trouble. That's how you should be reading this. I am in trouble. If I start this project without moving some of those lines out, the odds are tremendous that I can't deliver on time, and depending on the complexities, I may fail. So with complexities, you just go figure out what they are. Where are the hidden connections that you're not seeing? You know, is it a dependence? You know, is something from a supplier? I don't know what it is. I just wrote it down because I always track them down and they're always there. Can you change your relationship with your stakeholders and sponsors such that the risk tolerance increases? But the real thing that's going to get you is probably the technical complexities. And you may have to reconfigure the project. If I haven't said this, I want to say it again. Never ride the ship down. If you look at this, and this project's going to fail, get out as soon as you can. Other people have different opinions, but I don't think even an hour of your life is worth wasting for something that isn't going to work. I mean, we've all had projects that weren't quite as stellar as we wanted, but you go in, you explain the problem, and if no one wants to listen, start looking around, because there's really no reason to stay with it. Now, this is sort of our last slide, and I'll go quickly. As I said, I was in the Agile movement very, very early. When I wrote the uses of chaos theory in project management, and I posted it, I gave it at the PMI conference, as I said, and posted it to the web, Jim Highsmith, who is one of the people who signed the Agile Manifesto, read my paper. And he actually picked up the phone and called me and said, Donna, I think you're a like-minded person. So that officially welcomed me into the Agile community. And shortly, when the Agile Manifesto was going to be signed, I called Jim that night and said, Jim, you got a bunch of men going there and you don't have a woman. Can I please get on a plane? And he said, Donna, you can't write software. No. A couple of years later, he called me and said, Donna, we missed things in the manifesto. So a group of 25 of us got together to write this. So I don't want to take too much time. This is not perfect. The 25 of us were herding freaking cats. You should have seen what that meeting was like. But we had the right idea. We wanted to start to anchor this to business. You'll see a lot of these terms are probably closer to what you'll actually see process-wise in SAFe or in some scaled Scrum program, because we hear a lot about continuous flow of value, and that's misunderstood, and there's just not a lot of time to say a lot. But I will say the problem with a single group saying they will offer a continuous flow of value is that their value may not be corporate value, and I'll just leave it at that. But the concept of always engaging customers, always making sure that you are unleashing creativity and innovation by recognizing individuals as the ultimate source of value and creating an environment where they can make a difference. That's what I've been doing for the last year. And I think that's critically important. So would I say this is worth keeping a copy of? Yeah. Did we do it exactly right? No, but it helps you understand where we were trying to go. And it's still where I think the whole PPM technical project, everything we're doing is heading. So quickly, 4 simple insights from Nimble PM. And by the way, Nimble PM is me. It was the moniker that my editor gave me back when I was writing for Tech Republic. Personal responsibility and double loop learning enables authority. To be successful, ladies, you need to take the risk of saying, I will commit to this deadline. I will commit. If you don't control the people, you can't say that. I've always had my staff work for me, but I put my whole reputation on the line to deliver, and I have a team that will support me. And people trust me because I speak with a voice of authority, but more important, I got skin in the game. I'm not bullshitting. There's nothing there. I'm as honest as the day is long, and I have a very transparent face, so everybody knows I'm telling the truth. Outcomes provide the roadmap. Never get suckered into requirements documents, because we've proven that 43% of that's nonsense. Always ensure you ask, what is the outcome? What is the smallest number of things that need to be delivered to actually make the change? You'll always find that focusing on the outcome gives you a fighting chance of meeting the deadline. And by the way, if there are risks, so when I say meet the deadline, if I know that there's a big unknown in the project, I'm going to say from the beginning, this is the happy path. We may be late for 3 weeks or 6 weeks if this happens. So that's still on time. It's all about the team. You yourself, don't make it happen. They do. They're the creative. So you keeping them safe, which by the way is what most of them want, is your job. And then always success is measurable and repeatable. And you develop the models, your own models, and I'm showing you mine, to ensure that your success is measurable and repeatable and that you feel good about it. So, sorry, a little rushed, but I want you to know, and please understand I'm serious. if you want the slides, if you want to talk to me, if you've got questions. I'm semi-retired. I'm available. You will not be inconveniencing me. Write to Nimble PM, reach out to me at the Analyst Syndicate, because once an analyst, always an analyst, or reach out to me on LinkedIn. I would love to help, especially since I think I'm going to write some of this down for a book, and it's always good to know people who are currently in the field. So with that, thank you very much.
Yes, clap all around. Donna, thank you so much for sharing so much of your valuable insights and wisdom that you've learned over your career. A number of things that kind of stood out for me were the 24-hour rule around making decisions. I can really see how valuable that would be, especially on complicated or complex projects. And knowing your strengths, like playing to your strength, and kind of sometimes maybe like said, sticking to your lane, but really knowing what you're good at and really, I just really love that. Thank you so much. And I think as a project manager, this whole like a piece of accepting reality, like really grounding yourself, always being grounded in like what's so about your project. So, and I like all of the different models and this idea that, like we can use models to be able to make the work that we do, like be more effective in the work that we do. And that we're not stuck with any model, right? That we could try on your models, and if we want to adapt them to, to the environments that we work in. So that and so much more. Thank you so much. And I thought maybe quickly, like, what is there anything you could say to me about the impact of being a woman in project management and your experience of, maybe say a little bit more about your maybe where being a woman in project management helped or hindered you?
No, it actually helped me, because we started off with Myers-Briggs. I'm an NT, very important because I worked in engineering and software. I therefore was a thinker, could understand the people I was talking to. I also, and ladies, please don't be insulted about this, I worked in a 90%, 95% male environment. I snuck into the wife mode. So we're talking guys who don't deal well with women, but they're happily married. When they trust a woman, their brain just goes, oh, well, this is, I call it the wife mode. You call it whatever you want. But men who will not trust other men will look at a woman who they consider smart and let her, and it's fine. The relation now the downside is you sometimes have to switch jobs to get promoted. Now, my boss, when I was CFO, got me into the, when I was at Rome, got me into the CFO training program. So I've had met a number of men treat me very, very well, which is important. But mostly, because I'm not one of the guys, that's another mode. If you could do that, Carol Bartz, the CEO of Autodesk, she knew how to do one of the boys. I could not do that. So trust me, I'm loyal to you. Wife mode really, really worked. But I also have to say the fact that I could speak with authority. So that's always been the thing. One last story I'll give you was I was hired by HP to run a 90-day project where the goal was to replace, for fidelity, 10,000 disk drives at 25 locations worldwide. When we'd run a few tests on this, on the methodology I was going to use, the sponsor said, I don't like this. You're not giving people enough notice. And I said, excuse me, let me be clear. You tried this project 2 years ago. You took a year and a half and did 2,000. I have 90 days, count them, 90 days to do 10,000 in 25 locations, and many of those are in different countries. So unless you can tell me how I can meet that objective and meet your greater stakeholder involvement, we're going to do it my way. his jaw dropped, the HP sales rep crawled under the table, and everybody stared at me. The upshot of this was he agreed with my methodology. At the retrospective, he said, I still don't think you did enough stakeholder engagement. And then he offered me a long-term contract at Fidelity and told me that I was the third person to have ever been offered that contract. So if I screwed up, it wasn't too obvious because I had the contract in my hand. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it really does. And I think you pointed to something you've mentioned throughout your talk, the importance of trust and building relationships and, you know, being reliable to our clients. Donna, thank you so much for sharing yourself with us and all of your knowledge. And again, for those attending, you can connect with Donna. And I forgot to mention this at the beginning, any of our speakers today and panelists today would be happy to connect with you. And you'll be able to link to their bios actually from the website for the virtual conference today. So you'll be able to connect with any of the people here speaking on LinkedIn. Donna, thank you so much. Everyone, we're going to take a couple of minutes while we just switch over and get set up for our first panel, which is going to be moderated by Linda Vella. We're very excited. So just give us a minute or two, and then we'll get right into the next part of today's agenda. Thank you so much again, Donna.